you because I don't know what I'd do without you. So I'm going to share my screen because I've got a lot to tell you and I talk fast. It says starting the screen sharing is going to stop the computer sound share. Is that all right, Terrence?
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. We want to hear you.
Nope. Sorry, guys. Put that one down. Tonight we're going to be talking about bonding and attachment. And I always start with telling you one of the reasons that I like to do this is because when we as parents come into this job, we come in with everything that we have brought with us from our own families, some of which is not what we would like to pass on in the future. So a lot of what I do at this point is talk to you about making a concerted effort to understand exactly what you want to pass on in the future. What do you want your kids to know? How do you want this to go forward?
I'm sorry, Ms. Clancy. I think the PowerPoint you're sharing is a different one.
Yes, it is. And I'm trying to figure out what happened to it. I had it up earlier.
Oh, okay.
I'm really sorry. I really apologize for that. I'll drop this one and find the other one. There it is. It was there all along. Anyway, we're going to be talking about bonding and attachment, but I always start with, I want you to as parents, understand what you brought to this job and what you want to pass on. So I always start with that purposeful, thoughtful, deliberate legacy. It's our turn now. What do we want?
Sorry, Ms. Clancy again. I think you might want to stop share and then reshare again to get the one you're actually looking at, because we're still looking at the empty PowerPoint.
Oh, really? Okay. Stop. So stop sharing and try it again.
Mm-hmm. That should work now.
I'm sorry, hon. There you go. Can you see it now?
Not yet.
Not yet. Now can you see it? How come it worked earlier and it's not working now? You still can't see it?
Mm-mm.
Okay, I'll drop it again. Drop that. Start over.
And if all else fails, Ms. Clancy, if you're able to email it to one of us, we can do the screen sharing for you. Oh, looks like we got business. There it is.
Hey, we got it.
You know how this is my worst nightmare is dealing with this with a computer. Okay.
You're doing great.
We're going to appreciate that, Terrence, that nice letter, that nice word of encouragement. So when we talk about bonding and attachment, the definition of bonding and attachment is a trusting relationship with lack of fear, realistically able to trust yourself and the environment, comfortably confide openly and confront safely and truly know another person. Which of us does not want that? So, but the problem is many of us don't know how to get there from here. Bonding is the process involving a set of behaviors leading to the emotional connection, the attachment, and with a primary caregiver. This starts in the first 3 years of life, primarily the first year. But and the attachment is that bond with the unique qualities and characteristics in a caregiver-infant relationship, with a special enduring form of emotional relationship with a specific person, involves soothing, comfort, and pleasure. The loss or threat of loss of that person is very distressful. The child finds security and safety in the context of this relationship. So it starts in the beginning, and if the child doesn't get it in the beginning, it's difficult for that child to make relationships. I know that Change Happens sent you guys the 5 love languages quiz. I don't know if any of you did it, but if you didn't, hopefully at the end of this, you'll want to do it, and you want to do it with everyone in your family. But add up your scores of what you picked and determine your primary love language. The goal is share with other important people in your world to help determine theirs. Keep those love tanks filled. The 5 love languages came from Gary Chapman, and he said many of us walk around without our love tanks full. And there's certain, and different people have different things that help to fill that bank. And it works much easier if you know that. And we'll go over some of that as we go through this. When Sujita asked me to incorporate this, I thought that's a strange place to put it. But the more I looked at it, the more I realized that this is an excellent way to bond and attach, is knowing the person that you're trying to bond and attach with. And I start with the basics of this begins in infancy. And you know, if this were a true bonding and attachment, and we were talking about infants, I would be telling you, pick that baby up every time it cries, which is almost virtually impossible. But the only way a human being learns to bond and attach is if the caregiver is there for that baby. And the 5 love languages are the words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch. And we'll be talking more about that, or I'll incorporate that as we go. Bonding and attachment begins in infancy with that consistent primary caregiver meeting all of that dependent child's needs. The physical needs for food, clothing, nurturing touch, and a protected, safe environment. Mentally for appropriate stimulation, reading, talking, and that protected, safe environment. Emotionally for attention, reasonable expectations and limits, letting that child know that you love them in times of conflict and being present for that child. Careful, mutually satisfying communication. So as you can see here, attention is a basic human need. So when someone tells you, don't pick that baby up every time it cries, and you saying, thinking to yourself, usually what follows after that is, if you do, you'll spoil the baby. That is not what spoils human beings. The spoiled child is the one who does not get his or her needs met and goes into the future with a lot of unmet needs that can't be. Actually, a child who is not bonded and attached can be missing up to 30% of its brain capacity. And we don't, even in 2021, we are not yet able to duplicate brain tissue. So that's why I'm huge on pick that baby up when it cries. And it was my mother-in-law who did if you pick that baby up every time it cries, you're going to spoil it. But fortunately, it was my baby, so I could pick it up when I wanted to. But when we have to understand bonding and attachment from the very beginning, if it isn't set up in the first year of life, then it's very hard, because that foundation, that first 3 years, is where the child learns to maintain bonds of trust, can reach its full intellectual development. And like I said, I don't want any child I know to be missing any portion of his or her brain. Babies are born with 20% of their brain capacity, and it's up to the parents to fill in the other 80%. Now, again, it's not possible to always pick a baby up when it cries, but if you go for as much as you can, you'll hit the mark. If that baby learns to bond and attach, that little human can develop a conscience. Without this, that child is not able to connect. They cannot make an emotional connection with another human being. And that's how this is an extreme case, but that's a true sociopath, a true antisocial personality disorder. Developing and maintaining relationships with others. If no one cares enough about that little person when they're tiny to meet its basic needs, then how can the child feel that anybody's going to be there for them, or that they can trust this environment, because they're born unable to do a single thing for themselves, and somebody has to do everything for them. And the more that happens for them on a consistent basis, the more they learn to trust. And it doesn't take them long at all to be saying, no, leave me alone, I do it myself. So When you think about it, that totally dependent time doesn't last very long. It just seems like it lasts forever. This helps the child build healthy self-esteem and identity, and to learn to regulate their feelings. And you know, when infants are stressed, they don't hold it in, they offload it instantly. You know, they let you know that something is wrong instantly. And but they haven't yet got the capacity to regulate their feelings. So when a little person is pitching a fit or throwing a temper tantrum, sometimes all you really have to do is go up and put your arms around them and say something like, I'm going to help you until you can help yourself. Because all of this process helps all of that little person's brain structure and nervous system come together. Until the child has had time to grow, the nervous system is not organized. The longer the child learns that he or she can trust and someone is there for them, the more the system comes together, and they can learn to communicate. And the thing about it is, when you talk to people whose children are already past this, we all have met people that are not able to do some of these things because this did not happen for them. So they're not able to be in a relationship. They can't regulate their feelings. And for the most part, this comes back to their needs weren't met when they were little. Some of this stuff comes out of the studies that they do, a great many of the studies that they do in Russian orphanages. In Russia, they have orphanages that are perfectly clean. All the babies' needs for food and clean beds, all of that is met. But you can have a room, and the experts that go and study it, they can walk in a room with 25 babies and not a one of them is making a sound, because they've already learned that there's no point. And what they've discovered is the babies in the back of the room have smaller brain capacity than the ones even in the front of the room that are hearing the activity in the hallway and in the front of the room. So the more the baby gets his or her needs met, picked up, cuddled, eye contact, all of that helps to set this baby up for the rest of its life. By the third year, actually by probably the end of the first year, they are up to about 30% of their brain capacity. My brother-in-law and sister-in-law adopted a baby girl from Korea. And in Korea, they don't allow the babies out of the country until the baby is 8 months old. It's their tradition. It's your baby, but it stays in Korea until it's 8 months old. You can go over there and stay with it, but the baby cannot leave the country until it's 8 months old. When they got their baby daughter at 8 months, within 2 weeks, the whole family had gathered in their city to welcome this baby into the family. And I walked by her crib, and she was laying in her crib doing this. Now, this was an 8-month-old baby. 8-month-old babies are crawling up the side of the crib. Normal, healthy 8-month-old babies. That's a 3-month-old baby behavior. They were told she was in one caring, loving foster home for that entire 8 months, when in fact, it turns out she was in 5. So there was nobody consistently meeting that baby's needs. So she was already over half her life developmentally delayed. They were able to catch her up, but that took an awful lot of work. Not completely. She never completely got as much as she could have had they had her for the whole 8 months. I assure you, when they got her, they didn't put her down. Healthy infant and caregiver cycle, that consistent primary caregiver responds empathetically and consistently to that baby's needs. The baby responds back with cooing, gazing, snuggling, eventually smiling, and the caregiver continues to respond consistently to meet that baby's needs, including distress. Now, it doesn't take long for a parent to go, oh, that's her hungry cry. Oh, he's just fussy. Oh, that's his tired cry. And so eventually you learn that baby's language. and the baby learns to trust and relax. Sometimes there's a difficult infant caregiver cycle with an inconsistent primary caregiver that doesn't respond to the baby's needs. And what I have observed and learned over time is the second the caregiver puts the emphasis on them and not the baby, the connection is severed. And I say that because my last granddaughter was born with reflux, and everything you put in her came back out of her. And the feeding took an hour and a half, and you had to do it every 3 hours. And every time I was concerned about where that food was going to land, on me or the sofa or anything else, I realized that I wasn't tuned into her needs to be nurtured. Does that make sense, guys? Somebody shake their head for me if it makes sense. The second, it's like when you see a parent in the grocery store and their child is pitching a fit, and the parent is more concerned about what the 25 other people in the store that they'll never see again think about them than what's going on with their child. It's the same principle. The second you take your focus off of what that little person needs and put it on yourself, it severs the connection. Make sense? Yeah? Okay. Help me out, guys, because it's hard to talk to myself on the computer. And okay, it's an incredibly important that fathers are involved, incredibly important. Many years, everything fell on mom. No matter what was wrong, it was mom's fault. You guys remember that? Remember when if something was wrong with the child, it had to be something the mother did? And years ago, thank you, Kimberly, I appreciated what you maybe I'm the only one that remembers that. Okay, but years ago, I went to a conference where they were talking about birth defects. And they were only able at that point to identify definitively one, fetal alcohol syndrome. So they could only identify one of them at that point. So I listened to the seminar for most of the day, and then I raised my hand and I said, if you can only identify one, fetal alcohol syndrome, and that's on the mother, who's researching the sperm donor? I mean, where is that in all this? Well, you'll be happy to know that they have changed things enormously, and now mothers aren't totally responsible. And fathers are incredibly important to children. So much research is being done on this now. Infants whose fathers are actively involved are more intellectually stimulated, more competent, more socially oriented when closely attached to their fathers. And again, the reason that I worked all the years that I did with the incarcerated in the jail system is because there's a lot of fathers in there. And so they have to understand. At the same time, I was working with a group of girls in a transitional living. And most of those girls had no contact with their fathers. Neither did the girls in the detention center, in the juvenile detention center. So what I would do was let the girls, the women out in the world, ask the men any question that they wanted, because no one would ever know where the other person was. You know, they didn't know who they were and they didn't know what they were. But the question I got most was, why didn't my father love me and why did my father leave me? So, and it's what research shows, it's the most important thing a little girl needs from her daddy is, am I pretty, daddy? Am I pretty, daddy? And the most important thing a little boy needs from his daddy is this what a man looks like? Does a man look like this? Does a man act like this? And if they don't get it from their father, they'll find it anywhere, any place they can. And hopefully it's a good role model. But you watch the children with their fathers. They'll be in the grocery store or Home Depot, and the little boy or the little girl will go hi to you. You know, because they're much more socially oriented. Harvard says that that mothers are for nurturing. We're for cuddling and nurturing and communicating. And daddies are for putting the babies out in the world for encouragement and independence. Daddies teach them how to go out in the world. And this bonding and attachment deepens with awareness, knowledge, and practice. Doesn't every relationship increase or deepen with awareness, knowledge, and practice? So both parents are important. We mommies can nurture them to death. And I know that after I started doing a lot of studying on this, I was watching my grandchildren, and my granddaughter was walking down the driveway with her bicycle, and she said, Pop, I don't want to go. And he said, you're going, just get on the bicycle. And I would have said, it's okay, honey, you don't have to go. And her grandfather said, no, you're going. And of course, when they got out there, she didn't want to come home. So again, if she'd only had me, she'd have been in the house. All right, damaged trust. This is what, damaged trust. If the trust was established, I need to back up a minute. You can't pass this on if no one's given it to you. And some of the clients I work with don't have their children with them at the time. And they're very concerned about that. And sometimes they get upset if the child calls someone else mommy. And I tell them, just be grateful. That means that baby is learning to bond. That little person is learning to bond. If they get the bond, if they learn how to attach, that can be passed on or transferred. If they never learn, it can't be transferred because there's nothing there to transfer. Does that make sense? Does it? Okay. You guys help me out. Throw something in there so I can, because I put this together after she told me to incorporate the love language thing. Normally I'd be inundating you with a whole lot more stuff on infants and why this is so important. But if that baby has learned about, I worked with a gentleman some years back. He came and did some work with me with the guys, the incarcerated guys. And when he was a small child from 0 to 4, he was raised on a farm, and he thought that was his family. He thought they were fine, that he was fine. When he was 4 years old, his mother came to the country that he was in and kidnapped him and took him back to a different country. After 4, he was exposed to everything imaginable that no child should ever be exposed to. But as an adult, he is still able to be in a bonded and attached permanent relationship because someone set it up for him between 0 and 4. So he had it to give. So, but if that trust is damaged, it's usually caused by a physical or emotional separation. There are volumes done on this subject now. There's some indication that ADHD might be influenced by this. Hard to know. But if there's a physical or emotional separation, for example, the caregiver is severely depressed or, God forbid, addicted to something that takes the attention away from the baby, or physically removed for some reason, or there's unrealistic expectations or limits on the child. For example, when those mothers some years back, several mothers left their children with an 8-year-old, and the 3-month-old that he was watching died. That's a totally unrealistic expectation for an 8-year-old to be watching any children, let alone an infant. Or you can have an unrealistic expectation, something as simple as the 4-year-old should watch the 2-year-old, or your 4-year-old isn't going to lie, because they are, but it's not a lie to them. But if your expectations are unrealistic for that phase of development, then there's no trust, because the child can't possibly live up to your expectations. Lying, that's a huge one. If the parents lie to the child, you get a lot of that if somebody finds out later they were adopted, or somebody didn't tell them something. I can only give you some of the examples that are poignant from my experience, but when someone is incarcerated, often they'll tell the child that they're working offshore or that they're in school. And I assure you, someone is going to tell that child, because when I was on the playground at the elementary school, someone else would be telling them, your daddy's in jail, or your mommy's in jail, or a relative will tell them, somebody's going to tell them. The best thing to do is to tell the child yourself. Tell the child what's going on. Lying to the children, with any of us, if someone lies to you, you know that's going to break the trust. How about evasiveness? You know, we don't talk about that. You know, we don't talk about that. Why are you asking that question? Being evasive damages trust. It does for adults too, but when we're talking about, at this point, it's any relationship. Lack of openness by a family member, lack of trust, damages trust. Divorce, especially if it's messy, damages trust. You know, if one parent says something about the other parent, and it doesn't mean that they have to be divorced for this to happen, but the second you tell a child something about his or her other parent, you are talking about half that child's gene pool, and the child takes it very personally. So if you say, I worked with a little boy whose father had left when he was 3 months old, and he never knew his father. But the only time he ever heard anything about his father was when he was doing something bad. And then his mother and his grandmother would say, you're just like your father. So I asked him what I could help him with. And he said, I want to know about my father. And I said, okay, what do you want to know? And he told me that, you know, that he told me what I just told you. So I took out a sheet of paper and wrote in my handwriting and said, ask everyone that knows your father to tell you something good about your father. And I clipped my business card to it so his mother could call and ask me, if she chose to, why I was meddling with her kid. And the next week when he came back, she never called. The next week when he came back, he ran in the room and I said, did you learn something good about your dad? And he said, yes. And it was like two good things. And I said, how many other things did you have to hear? He learned this many bad things and 2 good things, but at least he learned 2 good things. So
I got a quick question. A lot of times you do see this in people that are raised in single parent households too as well. Especially I know for in the inner city community. This goes on a lot, especially when you have teenage pregnancies and things like that.
you're talking about the people that I learned all this from. You're right. You know, you're absolutely right. See, and so when that happened, when he told me the 2 good things, and I said, just exactly what do you want to know about your father? And again, I wrote it in my handwriting on a piece of paper so that she could get upset with me and not him. And I said, go home and tell your mother that old lady at school told you you had to do this. So she, and again, sent my business card, but I wrote in my handwriting, and what he wanted to know about his father was, what kind of music does he like? What kind of food does he like? What kind of sports does he like? You know, basic things. What does he do for a living? He just wanted to know basic things. And I said to him, you know that you may not get these answers right away. You know that it might take time to get them, but just fill this paper out over time as you get the answers. That his mother never did call me. So maybe she thought it was a good idea too. Maybe she was looking for a way to ask him that, or for him to ask or tell him those things about his father. But when the family member doesn't tell the child comes up with all kinds of imaginary reasons why that their father or their parent isn't there. The younger it occurs, the more that child is going to take responsibility for it, because 0 to 6, they take responsibility for everything in their universe. They're responsible if it snows, if it rains, if daddy left, and grandpa wouldn't have died if I'd called him, or mama wouldn't have left if I hadn't been mean to her. And if someone doesn't address that with a child from 0 to 6 and tell them, and again, it's a mantra, it's not your fault. You didn't cause it. You're not responsible, but you can't fix it, but we can learn to cope. And that's what you tell them over and over again, because if they're little, they take 100% of the responsibility for everything in their universe. And death or incarceration, again, all of that's damage stress. Do not tell the child he's gone to sleep, or, you know, because then the child is never going to go to sleep. You know, all of those things. It's damaged trust. And things to do to heal the breach. If there is a breach in the trust, slowly and consistently find things that feel good to the child, respectfully rocking, cuddling, and holding. Now we're going to go into this more around the love languages in a minute, but respond to that child's emotional age. Socially and emotionally, they're younger, and they, you know, when, I don't know about you, but when I get upset, I don't always act like a mature adult. I mean, watch people on the freeway. Watch how many mature adults are not on the freeway. And so if your child is not acting socially and emotionally their chronological age, oftentimes you're just going to have to do nonverbal soothing and comforting, and help them identify their emotions and express their needs. And if we're not able to do that, we're not able to teach the children. The biggest lie parents tell their children is, what's wrong, Mama? Nothing. What's the matter, Daddy? Nothing. And it's obvious that something is wrong. You don't have to give the children the details, but you can say something like, it's just, I'm a little stressed right now, but I can handle it. You don't worry about it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, Miss Clancy. I just wanted to give you a quick update, 5-minute warning.
Yeah, thanks. Teach children that every feeling that they have is okay. And again, if you're not comfortable with your feelings because you were told you shouldn't feel that way, what's the matter with you? Suck it up. Why are you crying? You want me to give you something to cry about? If that was what you heard growing up, all you could do is go. And those of you who were in the military, back to that. Okay.
Man up, man up, man
Yeah,
up.
man up. Okay. So what are you supposed to do with all those feelings? And so, and everybody has them. It's part of the rich makeup that makes us human. And if you leave the feeling alone, it'll runs across your forehead, runs across your mind, and lasts about 30 seconds. Okay. If you glom onto it or you don't know how to handle it, heaven only knows what you're going to do with it. So teach your children that all feelings are okay. Every one of them. There's no moral implication to any feeling that you have. There's no good or bad. It's what you do with the feeling. It's not the feeling, but teach them healthy ways to express them, and teach them to ask for what they need. If you need a hug, it's your responsibility as an adult to go get one. Doesn't have to be physical, but it's got to be a hug. It's your responsibility to get your needs met. Does that make sense? But if you're not teaching the kids, if you're not showing them, they're never going to learn that. Okay. So don't say nothing. Give them, say, I'm really stressed. I'm going to go take a walk, or I'm going to, as you do, Terrence, turn on the music that changes your brain waves, you know. And again, you know, teach them healthy ways to deal with things. If we move on to the next slide, we're going to start with the first one. Slowly and consistently find things that feel good to the child. Respectfully rocking, cuddling, and holding. We'll pick up there. Is that a good time to stop? We'll pick up there when we come back.
We have 3 minutes, so if you want to, because this is a really good one. I don't know if you want to.
Okay. All right. Okay. The first, when we're talking about the love languages, and if you guys didn't get the quiz, Change Happens will provide it for you. Get the quiz and figure out where you are. The first love language is words of affirmation, spoken love. And that's totally the opposite of harsh, critical language. And Dr. Chapman's premise was that if you know what your the person you care about what fills up their love bank, how they can hear you, then you can fill up their love bank. That's his or their love tank. That's what he calls it, a love tank. And those of you who are in relationships of any kind know clearly that if your love language is words of affirmation and nobody gives them to you, or and they're still talking to you, you don't feel like they love you or appreciate you. So we'll talk. Are my 3 minutes up?
Oh no, you still got 2 minutes. This is so good, Miss Clancy. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. And that spoken language is our words of encouragement. And the reason I said the opposite of harsh, critical, pay attention if your love language is words of affirmation and somebody criticizes you or yells at you. It's a double hit, because this is how you know people love you. So if someone is constantly criticizing you, what are they telling you? I don't love you. Make sense? And certainly if someone's harsh. All right. Compliments, encouragement. You can do it. It looks good. You're almost there. Compliments. You did well picking that out. Or you did well on your test. You did well working with your sister, whatever it is. Compliments. Kind words. I will always love you. I'm always proud of you. Be very careful not to connect it to I will love you because you're pretty or you're good, or I'm only proud of you when you make an A on your test. No, you are always proud of them and you always love them, period. Don't connect doing and being in the same sentence. And humble words. Always make requests, not demands, because love is a decision. And I put this in because it's important that you know when you're communicating how people hear you. Only 7% of any message that you're giving someone is in the words you use. 38% of it's in your tone of voice. 55% of it's in your body language and facial expression. So when you're telling somebody I love you, it better not be, yeah, I love you, or you know I love you, or something like that. Or, yeah, I hear you, you know. So if this is how your person can feel your love and know that you love them, then it's your responsibility to figure out how to make this work. Does that make sense?
So good. Yes.
Okay. Now I'm up. Okay. Now go on.
Okay.
We'll go on to the next one.
Awesome. Oh,
Share this.
yes, ma'am, you do, please.
Okay. Let's hope this time it's better than it was the last time. Okay. All right. Again, if this is your love language, like Terrence pointed out, it may not be your loved one's love language. So you may think when you're giving them words of affirmation that you're talking their language. That's why if you get the test from Change Happens, make copies and make everybody in the house do it. And remember that the most important part of any message that you're giving is your body language and facial expression counts the most. So watch what you're saying. And if you're not getting the result you want, check your tone of voice. If you're telling somebody good job, as opposed to you really did a good job, it's a huge, two entirely different messages. Oh, now it's not going to let me move it. Do I need to do it again if it won't move?
Yeah, try that and see if it works. But we can see your screen though. We can see the PowerPoint.
You can see it, but it won't move for me. Let me see if it'll do it on this.
Okay.
Nope.
You can try to stop share and then reshare.
Yeah.
And see if it works.
Yeah. See, guys, I told you that the thing that terrifies me almost the most is
You're doing great.
My computer. All right, let's see if it'll do it this time. Now let's see if it'll let me move. Nope, not gonna let me move. Now what do I do?
Well, you can, can you minimize so that you can go back?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Why don't I escape? Nope, it won't. The whole computer's frozen. Nope, not gonna let me do it.
You said
Well,
the whole computer is frozen, huh?
the whole thing froze up on me.
Try it one more time. We're gonna
One more time. We're going to
this,
try it
this is
again.
this is such good information, Miss Clancy. I mean,
Well, you know, when she told me about bonding and attachment, when you think about it,
hmm
and if we miss that opportunity or we have to start over at some point, nope, not going to play. If we have to start, I'm going to come down here and do it. Now let's see if it'll do it. Yeah. The second one is quality time.
okay, now
Give it,
be sure.
it's not sharing.
Yes, ma'am.
No.
And
It's-
once you
okay.
share it, yeah,
This time it might let me do it. How's that?
yes.
No.
I can't
Just
wait
go-
till you get to my love language.
Okay, good.
That's the most important one, just in
I
case.
see. Uh-huh. Yeah. And you know, when you get that, if nobody picks up that
Mhm.
that Grubhub, you have to share with all of us.
I will be more than happy, but I don't think we are gonna get
I don't think anybody's going to turn it down, without a doubt. Can you see that screen yet?
not yet.
Not yet. Ugh,
Almost there.
I don't know what to tell you guys. I'm so sorry.
No, you're almost there. You're doing well.
It's okay.
No, not so much.
And if
Let me,
all else fails, you could just talk it through and talk
Yeah.
us through it.
that I can do that. That we may come to that because
Yes, ma'am. And if you lean in a little closer to the screen, we might be able to see it off your glasses. I'm kidding.
I'm sorry about that. I turned off every light in the room
No, it's
trying
great.
to get it to quit doing that, you know, and it didn't. So
Yes,
there
ma'am.
you go.
Okay, yeah, we'll just
Let me go back here and try it one more time. Now, see, I'm trying to get it to share the screen. Try it again. Now let's see if it'll let us. Yes,
You got it. All
I
right.
got it. See, persistence.
Yes, I love it.
Uh, uh, okay. The second one, again, is quality time, giving someone your undivided attention and togetherness, taking walks, playing games, doing things together that the other person likes. Both of you, one or the other of you have to like it. But if you give of yourself and 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 do something for the other person, and then what better sign of love than sacrificing, doing something you're not crazy about with someone who is crazy about it. And when we're talking about quality time, how many of you have noticed out in the world how many people are walking down the street with family or with a friend or with someone and they're on their cell phone, you know? And I see it all the time with parents and children. The kids are there and the parents are on their cell phones. You know, that's not quality time. That's awful, you know? And if your friend did that to you, then would you think that person cared about you? No. Someone is more important. Listen for feelings when the person is with you and you're spending that quality time. Listen for feelings and observe their body language. You're going to learn a lot if somebody tells you nothing, or you know, watch what the rest of them is telling you, and definitely make eye contact and learn to do new things that the other person's interested in. Include them in things that you're interested in, and don't interrupt. Parents are given 2 ears and 1 mouth, and we use that 1 mouth much more than we use these 2 ears. So listen to the person, you know. And you guys that work with teenagers, I think we talked about this before. You know that one of the things that they are desperate for is someone to listen to them, someone that cares enough to be vested enough to listen to them and what's going on in their world. And quality time, you know when it's quality, you know when you're with someone and it's quality time. And if this is how a person wants you to show them that you love them, it's a small price to pay for you to go to something you're not thrilled about being in. Receiving gifts. This is a visible sign of someone loves you that they can hold in their hand. Now, this again, a gift doesn't, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I have to spend a fortune. No, you don't. If it's something that you know the person likes, and you know, you just see an interesting rock and you know they like interesting rocks, because some people do. If it's a pretty rock, or if it's something, if you see a flower and you know that the person that whose love language this is likes flowers, if it's not in your yard, ask the person permission to cut it or take it. But take that person the flower, or you can make them something. You can make them a heart that says, I love you. Just some gift. It can be expensive or inexpensive if it's meaningful. You know, if you know that that person's love language is gifts, and you're going by Dunkin' Donuts, and you know that they like Dunkin' Donuts or cinnamon rolls or whatever, get one. And this is an investment that you're making in a relationship. So whatever you put into that at this point pays big dividends at the other end. This is you making an investment in that relationship. It can be free, a flower or a stick, an interesting stick, a stone from a nature walk, just something that you know that's going to be meaningful for that person. It can be a handmade original. You can make something yourself to give to that person. I don't know how many of you, and probably all of you at some point, has worn one of those macaroni necklaces that we all got over time, you know. So, you know, you don't have to make a macaroni necklace unless it's meaningful for the other person. And get gift ideas for that person from friends and family. You don't have to take these things on your own. You can ask for input from people that know the person that you're building that relationship with. It's the same with words of affirmation. Pay attention to what you hear other people saying, or what you read, or what you've seen, and write it down. Just make something for yourself, so that until it becomes a habit for you. Because if it's not easy for you, you're going to have to make the investment to learn to do that love language, quality time, whatever it is. Okay. But listen, get your friends and family to say, yeah, I know he likes that, or yeah, I know she really likes that, and get it for the person. And listen for ideas from things the person is excited about. If they're really excited about something, then you can find something that relates to that, and you can get it for them. Again, I don't know what better investment you can make than in a future for the relationship. The gift of yourself, being there for that other person, your physical presence. And you know that sometimes when something horrific has happened in your family, and a meaningful person walks in the room and is there for you and stays with you, then you know there's no greater gift than that person putting him or herself in your presence to help you through something. And check with the person about how much of that they need. You know, if you just found out that I just learned from somebody today that their grandmother has pancreatic cancer, you know, and so they need to get together and be with each other for that. So the gift of yourself is critical stuff. The best present you can give another person is your presence. Is this anybody's love language? Can anybody relate to this?
It's not
Yes, you
mine.
can.
Oh my gosh, there she is.
Yeah. Yeah, you like it. You like it when people bring you gifts.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's not really the size of it, right? Or how much the quantity is, just like the thought most of the time, like just you thinking about that person and getting something.
That's exactly right. You know that they thought about you, and that that was meaningful to you, and this is for you. And you can look at it all the time and say, oh, see, they love me. So if that's your primary language, and somebody wants to be in a relationship with you, this is what they need to do.
Well, I'm going to use this. I can't wait to tell my wife that, hey, baby, I am the gift. Okay. Okay.
Go right on. See how well that goes over. And that's fine as long as you're doing it for her. See, you're right, Terrence. You're absolutely right about that. But the emphasis has to be on her and not on what you want. Make sense?
Great note, Miss Clancy. Great note.
Yeah, sorry, pal. Acts of service, doing things you know the other person would like you to do, seeking to please by serving, doing things for the other person. And again, those of you that, you know, if I happen to be a Christian, the Christian religion is based on servant leadership. The Christ washed the feet of his disciples. So it's not beneath anyone to do anything for someone else, because love is always a choice. It's always a decision. What I left out of this or took out of the presentation was when I was working with the women, and they would make choices for partners that weren't in their best interest. So we would talk, we talked about oxytocin, because women have a lot of oxytocin. We have a bunch of it, and you guys have not much. So in the beginning of a relationship, the chemistry lasts at the most 2 years. It's usually 12 to 18 months. And that's when people walk away saying, I don't love you anymore. I've fallen out of love with you. That's not love. That's, some people define it as lust, okay? If you're falling out of love. If you're in love with somebody, you're doing all this stuff. You know, you're just automatically doing this stuff if you're in love with somebody. But when the 2 years wears away, and that in love thing goes away, love is a decision. That's why, again, I tell people all the time, you can't have sex with anyone you're not married to. You can't marry them till you've known them for 2 years. Okay, because at that point, you will know just about everything there is to know about that person, and you'll know who you're making a choice to love, who you're making a decision to love, and you'll know what you're getting into, because after that, love is just work. I mean, and I'm not saying that derogatorily, but you know, we talked about the hardest job you'll ever do is being a parent, next to staying in a relationship, and they're neck and neck, because it's a choice and it's always a decision what you choose to do with it. So doing an act of love, and that's why when we're talking about if your love language is words of affirmation or anything, it's got to be not a demand. It's got to be a request, because if you request, if it's always your choice what you want to do. So it's not using somebody, not manipulating somebody, and not coercing them. It's got to be done out of your own choice to do it. You're making a choice to do this. And you can do surprise acts of service, like, you know, I'm trying to think of something like wash the other person's car, or just anything, something that you can do for them. And listen for things consistently requested as something that's really important to that person. You know, and you might, if she asked me that one more time, I wish she'd stop nagging me. Well, what they're telling you is what they're asking you to do is very important to them. They shouldn't have to nag if you're tuned in to what fills up their love tank. You know, if they're constantly having to ask you to do something, that's something that's very important to them. So you can say, or you can decide to do that. Does that make sense? Does it? Okay. You guys got to give me some feedback, because again, I'm talking to this computer.
Yes.
Okay. So listen for what you call nagging. You know, I wish you'd pick up your towel that you left on the bathroom floor. Look, you left it on the bathroom. Pick the towel up, you know, or whatever it is. Take the garbage out, because that's something that's very important to that person. And otherwise, all you're doing is draining the tank. You know, you pulled the plug and let the love fall out. Okay. And it's the same with kids. If you're constantly harassing them to do something, they don't know that that's their love, what your love language is. So that's why if you get a chance to do this, you can do it with the kids too. They, like I said, they get all into this. They think this is kind of fun. When I did it with my family, my my sister, my daughter-in-law, her two sons, young adult sons who are in college and still at home, were saying, okay, now, because her love language happened to be acts of service. So they were arguing about who was going to have to unload the dishwasher or put the dishes in the dishwasher, because she's nagging at him about that all the time. Ask for what acts of service speak the loudest to that person. What can I do? If I do one thing for you, what would speak the loudest? What would that be? What could I do to let you know that I love you? You know, and they'll answer. Make sense? Ask. And you talk about bonding and attachment. If you're filling up someone's love tank, I don't know how you could bond any more than that. Whatever it is. The last one is physical touch. Wise parents are touching parents. That's why I started this when telling you about the babies, because if the babies aren't held, hugged, cuddled, massaged, caressed, they don't, their brain capacity doesn't go to the 100%. After, when they hand you that baby in the hospital and it comes with its 20% of its little brain capacity, and it's your responsibility to fill up the other 80%, don't you want it to be with good stuff? Don't you want it to be healthy? You know? So yeah, babies that are held, hugged, cuddled, massaged, caressed, grow up much more emotionally healthy, of course. But if that's your love language, you can't stop with a baby. Physical touch can make or break a relationship. If this is your primary language, if touch is your primary language, and somebody slaps you, talk about a double message. You know, again, it's important that you know what the impact of this has on, you know, on you and the other person. And touch communicates love or hate. And abusive touch, hitting, slapping, devastating to the person whose primary love language is touch. Healthy physical touch is hugging, kissing, holding hands, massaging. Must be done with the full consent of the other person. Okay, that's critical. I say that because what we teach is, you know, someone can only touch you or abusive touch is anyone who touches you where you can, you know, where breasts, penis, vagina, but okay, it's not true. Touch is anywhere on your body, anywhere. Your whole body absorbs touch. Okay, so I teach parents, do not or teach your children that somebody has to have permission to touch them, because otherwise, you know, when somebody says, okay, go hug Uncle Harold, we're leaving now, going, and the kid goes, I don't want to, you know, because something about Uncle Harold, they just don't want to touch him, or Aunt Susie or whoever it is. And you say, don't be silly, you know, go touch him, you know, go hug him, you know. Don't know. If the child says no, it's no, because the message you're giving them, if they're not comfortable with that, is that their body is for someone else's gratification. That's not true. You never want them to think that. They don't have to go hug Aunt Susie if they get buried in her breasts and they can't breathe and they don't like it. Does that make sense? Okay, but if physical touch is their love language, then hugging, kissing, hand holding, massaging, all of that, touching them, you know, just when you walk by them and you know, you just give them a pat, or, you know, any of those things, that tells that person that you love them. That's how they read or absorb that message, was physical touch. Making sense?
Absolutely. So,
Anybody got physical touch as their primary love language?
I do.
yep, me too.
Yeah. So when somebody walks by and pats you on the shoulder and says, great job, you get that message.
I was just gonna say that. So that's why sometimes I'll wash the dishes just so when my wife comes down, she gives me a nice pat on the back. Like, oh, okay. I'm like, yeah.
See? So her love language is acts of service.
Yeah.
No question about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Good. You got this. Keep it up. All right.
Yep,
Things
that's
to
the
do.
mission.
What?
I said, that's my mission.
Yep. Good job, pal. You can't make it doesn't matter how high the stock market goes, it'll never touch this. You know, this investment that you're making in this relationship, you know, you're not like everybody says, there's no hearse followed by a armored truck with money in it, you know. Okay. Again, things to do to help heal a breach. Slowly and consistently find things that feel good to a child or anybody, like respectfully rocking, cuddling, holding. Respond to their emotional age, socially and emotionally younger when there's a crisis or there's been a breach of trust. Help that child identify emotions and express their needs. And again, if you haven't taught yourself how to get your own needs met, they're not going to learn it either, because you're their primary role model. Teach them all feelings are okay and healthy ways to express them. And those of you who all the feelings were weaned out of, because you shouldn't feel that way, and man up and all that ridiculous nonsense, that's inhumane. And I realize that you have to contain the feelings and learn how to handle them, but do it. It'll save your life. No one's love language is demanding, nagging, coercing, criticizing, manipulating, or complaining. That's not anyone's love language. That's a definitive drainer. So don't do those things. All right. And again, throughout life, bonding with your children is trusting them to be children. They are children. They are not little adults. They are children. So trust them to be a child and understand the nature of childhood. Kids are going to make mistakes and poor choices. It's been about 1 million years since I was a child, and I am still making mistakes and poor choices. You saw me go through that exercise with this silly machine because I didn't know exactly what to do. I'm still making mistakes. Understand that children are going to make mistakes. It's not the mistake that counts. It's what they do with the mistake. Help them to understand that they don't have to do it again, and help them to understand that there's something that they can learn from that. And as an adult, you remain calm and in charge when the child is upset. Again, when you see a parent throwing a temper tantrum, mirroring the child's temper tantrum, the child is standing there going, where's the grown-up? Where's the adult? Because there isn't one. So you, as the adult, have the responsibility to remain calm and in charge when the child is upset. And reconnect with a child, especially, and an adult too. I say this, but it's when we're talking about children, but anybody who's ever been in an important relationship, if there's a conflict, there's a part of you that longs for a reconnection on some level. With children, it's critical, absolutely critical. And you guys know when you come home from work and the kids pounce on you, now you're in the house with them more than you were before. But when you come in and the kids, they pounce on you, and all you want to do is just, if you'll stop at that moment and get down at their level and touch them and hug them, everything's calm. If you miss that opportunity, you've got chaos going on longer. Make sense? They just need to reconnect, especially if there's been a conflict. All right. Set realistic limits, expectations, and responsibilities. Remember, these are not little adults. These are children. Set realistic limits, expectations, and responsibilities. Don't do for them what they can do for themselves. Let them do that. Because if you're doing something for someone that can do it for him or herself, you're telling them they can't do it. But make sure it's realistic. Warm, affectionate, nurturing touch. And if you grew up in a family where that was not the norm, if your family weren't touchy-feely, you know, the Latin cultures are all expressive and huggy and talking and all that. And there are many other cultures that aren't. They're kind of stoic. Well, you got to get somewhere in between. The warm, affectionate, nurturing touch. Babies die for lack of touch. humans die for lack of touch. And I've seen people go to some drastic measures to get a touch. And that's, again, why I,
And I mentioned this too as well. When you have just like you had a lot of patients due to COVID that was in the hospital, and they weren't able to see or touch their loved ones. A lot of those patients was passing away quicker because they wasn't able to see their loved ones.
you're exactly right. Thank you so much for bringing that up, Lamarcus. You know, we have so much. I had to have surgery during COVID and I had to be there all by myself, and that's an icky play. That's an icky feeling. Imagine, I mean, I can't imagine dying and no one, yeah. Thanks for bringing that up.
Miss Constance, I was gonna say that myself, I was in a hospital back in March and in July, this March and then in July. And like you said, and Marcus said, that is the worst fear that I knew I was in a safe place because the doctors were taking care of me, but no one could come and visit. And that was one of the worstest thing, but I had to mentally think that I was going to be okay. And I had to, do what I had to do for myself and for my family.
That's right. But it would have been a whole lot easier if someone had been there with you.
Oh, it's nine brothers and sisters. So just imagine.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And okay. And the people out on the outside were grieving also. There's a grief process that we go through when we don't get what we need.
True.
And again, respectful, mutually satisfying communications and being present for the child. That means no cell phone. Okay. No electronic devices, unless you're playing them together and the other kid wants to be there with you or the other person does. Does that make sense? Watch what happens with these parents who are out there with their cell phones. That drives me crazy. They're not there for the kid. All right, guys. Purposeful, thoughtful, deliberate legacy. Am I early? No, I'm right on time. Okay. Remember, anything that you didn't get when you were growing up, it's your responsibility at this point. You can't do anything with how you were raised, but you can make it better for the future. As an adult, you're 100% responsible for what you're doing with it now. Does that make sense? Okay.
Absolutely.
Purposeful, thoughtful, deliberate legacy. So you're the one that's in charge of what you're doing for the future. So think about it. Purposeful, thoughtful, deliberate legacy. What do you want to pass on? Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Okay. Any questions, any comments, anything anybody would like to add?
I just want to say this was awesome, especially about parents, single parents raising